The Evil Dead trilogy is easily one of the best series of movies you can watch on Halloween or when you're looking for some quality 80s horror entertainment. These movies were extremely influential within the genre, just like their director, Sam Raimi, and the main character, Ash Williams, played by Bruce Campbell. They influenced the horror genre in massive ways, single-handedly creating a bunch of tropes we associate with horror today, but also innovating the genre. The most interesting part about these movies is how the first one is a straight up dark and bloody horror movie with lots of creepy and fucked up moments like you'd expect and want to see, especially from 80s horror. However, the second movie is more of a very dark horror comedy. It's still bloody and gory, and it's still somewhat creepy, but unlike the first Evil Dead, the second one features a big amount of black humor. Humor that in part works so well because of the amazing slapstick-like performance of Bruce Campbell, and because even today it feels fresh and unusual. I mean, how many horror series do you know that start out scary and then end up with over-the-top black comedy?
I have seen the dark shadows moving in the woods, and I have no doubt that whatever I have resurrected is sure to come calling for me.
It was the woods themselves. They're alive.
Evil Dead. They got up on the wrong side of the grave. Evil Dead from New Line Cinema.
This humor is amplified even stronger in the third movie, Army of Darkness, where Ash manages to travel back in time and lands in the Middle Ages. It sounds insane, it is insane, Ash definitely lost his mind, but it's hilarious and surprisingly works well because it feels like a natural progression to the franchise and because it is genuinely well written. These movies might be some of the weirdest and craziest horror movies because they simultaneously take themselves too seriously but also don't. The first Evil Dead movie is the darkest and most serious one. There is no humor here except for some moments that might seem a bit unintentionally funny today. But aside from that, it has everything you'd expect a horror movie to have. A group of teenagers, a creepy cabin deep in the woods, far from civilization, and a cursed book in a cellar you shouldn't walk into nor read from, which of course, being stupid teenagers, they do, and end up in a world of pain and horror. From the very start, there is a creepy atmosphere that feels even creepier due to the fantastic and chilling soundtrack. The atmosphere is present throughout the movie, but it's especially noticeable early on when the true horror waiting for the characters hasn't shown itself. It slowly builds anticipation and you can literally feel it in the air, and you know that something is definitely going to go down and it's going to be bad. What's great about this is how the characters almost want to get into trouble. They find a dark cellar in this cabin that was clearly used for very bad things, and a book that was made from human skin and written in blood. And of course, they read from it and play a recording that explicitly tells them not to do so.
Book of the Dead. The book is bound in human flesh and inked in human blood. It deals with demons, demon resurrection, and those forces which roam the forest and dark bowers of man's domain.
The recording is honestly pretty scary even from today's perspective, not because it necessarily mentions anything extremely explicit or gory. It's so creepy and works so well because of how the voice mixes with the atmosphere and soundtrack. It has a very eerie vibe that spreads itself throughout the entire cabin, and it's a moment where you realize that pure evil has been invited inside. But aside from it being uncomfortable, it's also interesting in terms of the lore the movie builds around this ancient evil and the demons. You want to know more about it, who wrote the book, where does this evil come from, and what are its goals. The franchise does explore these questions in more detail in later movies, but thankfully it didn't explain too much. Because I believe the reason the franchise, and especially the first movie, works so well is due to the mystery. We don't know a lot about this book nor about these demons, and we never really see their true forms. Sure, we see them possess others and turn into various objects, and they often look extremely grotesque, but those are not their true faces or forms. The mystery carries the story perfectly because it makes the things happening completely random and unpredictable. The demons are capable of everything and they are extremely ruthless and brutal.
I'm all right now, Ashley.
torturing me like this?
They also have a completely fucked up and twisted sense of humor that has become the signature of Sam Raimi movies, especially his horror flicks. These demons are out for blood, literally, and their goals seem to be to kill these teenagers in the most fucked up ways. But what's great about the movie is that it doesn't turn into a slasher or feels the need to show how wild it is by featuring constant gore on screen. Yes, sure, the gore is here and it's very bloody, but it also gives us room to breathe, to build up the suspense and atmosphere before getting scary again. This is why it works so well, because it plays around with the characters and also with our own fear. Back when The Evil Dead came out, there was nothing similar to it. People were genuinely freaked out by it and its gruesome plot. Because Ash isn't just dealing with demons and those demons possessing his friends and sister, he also has to decide how to deal with them and how to survive. The people that are possessed are still alive and conscious, which is shown by the demons switching to them to torment Ash. But you also never know if it's the real person talking or just the monster trying to fool or play around with its prey. This is genuinely scary and disturbing because whenever Ash is hacking or slashing his friends apart with the chainsaw or axe, you wonder if the person that's possessed is feeling all of it and realizing what's happening. Back then, this movie was considered so dark and violent, it was almost banned in a lot of places because people weren't used to this level of violence, blood, and horror. They thought the movie was actually cursed and also supposedly harmful to children, even though it was always highly rated and never even made for children.
Classic horror movies. There's no minimum to buy. Cancel anytime. So call now to get Frankenstein at the special introductory price of just $14.99. Have your credit card ready.
In the UK, there was even a term called video nasties for it. Horror movies threatened with prosecution by the UK due to British obscenity laws. Some people, especially religious and overly moral ones, had difficulties coping with the movie and viewed it as evil and harmful. A lot of these people were the same that also tried to ban and restrict heavy metal at the time. The Evil Dead was a big success despite that, but because of it landing on a lot of ban lists and not being shown in a lot of places, it makes you wonder how successful it could have been. I believe this is also one of the reasons why Bruce Campbell never managed to break out of his B-movie status and reach a larger Hollywood level of success despite clearly having the talent and charisma for it. He is a highly underrated actor and it's his amazing performance that carries these movies and makes them shine so much. The Evil Dead pretty much created the entire trope of a cabin in the woods that has dark things going on. It might be a cliche now, but back when the movie came out, this was fresh and not done a lot. It successfully captures the fear of isolation, demonic threats, Lovecraftian themes and symbols, and created an entire subgenre as a result. Once the film was released to theaters, it was an immediate success and other films featuring similar settings began to appear. This movie's atmosphere is on another level and none of the remakes or reboots managed to even come close. It's like the reboots thought that the more demons and blood they show, the scarier the movie will be. But the issue is that The Evil Dead was never a slasher movie, or at least not exclusively so. Yes, it had plenty of slasher elements, but its greatest strength was always the mystery and fear of the unknown. Whenever we have no idea what's going to happen next or how the evil spirits are going to mess with Ash and his friends, that's when we are scared or creeped out the most. The feeling of isolation gets stronger and stronger, especially as the group gets decimated over time until only Ash is left to survive. The Evil Dead feels like the movie itself is haunted and evil. When the demonic incarnation is spoken, you almost expect bad things to happen in your own house. It's extremely creepy even though all you hear is just a voice.
Shut it off.
But this voice is haunting and sticks with you. It stays in your head like a broken record. For me, the demon-possessed characters in this film are the most frightening characters ever put on film, because their behavior truly makes them seem like the inhabitants of hell. They are extremely sadistic, twisted, and fucked up beyond belief. Their only goals are to terrorize, torment, and torture you for as long as possible before dragging your soul down to hell with them. They are the hunters and you're the prey who's alone alone without any help. Ash only survives by coincidence and due to his sheer willpower. He's an interesting and great character because he's not some badass superhero who has experience fighting demons or any battle experience in general. This movie is actually his origin story and where he slowly, over the course of the franchise, starts turning into the cowardly badass we know and love. But he's relatable more so than most horror movie protagonists. He's just an average guy who wanted to spend a nice relaxed weekend with his friends only to end up in a world of pain and darkness. His reactions and behavior is natural because that's probably how most of us would react in such a situation. If you think you'll be instantly swinging an axe or blasting demons like the Doom guy, then you should think again. Most of us would crap our pants and run. This is exactly what makes a good horror movie actually scary. So many modern movies feature creepy looking clowns or villains that slash their way through hordes of bodies, but aside from them looking creepy, there's nothing scary about them. It's like modern horror movies think that the more extreme they get and the more gore and insane slashings they show, the scarier their movies will be. But they disagree with this logic. Modern slashers make you feel disgusted and uncomfortable and very rarely anything else. There is no suspense or mystery, the lore barely exists, and the atmosphere is non-existent in favor of more jump scares. The Evil Dead made viewers uncomfortable, but it knew when to be scary, when to be bloody, and when to give people some air and concentrate on the story and characters. Sure, the story might not be groundbreaking, but it's a lot better and more interesting than a lot of horror movies that create their monster or villain with the only purpose of killing and torturing people. The Evil Dead will always be one of the most influential and legendary horror movies because it pushed boundaries when it came to horror, but also in terms of practical effects and cinematography.